It's the fanciest countdown ever because we're so high tech with this new recording thing. So hello, welcome back to Transcending Humanity. This is episode 43. The typical reminder, for the legal whatever. Our views are our views and not those of anybody we work for or represent or anything like that. So, yeah. A couple of announcements. One, that Patreon is probably on your screen somewhere right now. So, send us money, please. I really want to keep doing the show as much as possible, but it's expensive. It's 15% of my income, yearly income, goes into the show. And if you love the show, help us out. We also now have a merch store. You heard that right. I am currently testing out the t-shirts. They should hopefully be here this week. Keep an eye on our Instagram to see how those look. But I've put some other things up there. There's a Conservative Tears mug, which, yeah, I ordered one of those too. And I made a little hormone bag for injectable hormones or whatever. And I need to come up with some other things too. But, and there's a hoodie, there's some pajamas, and as I think of other things, there's a baby onesie, and it says gender is a construct of our capitalist overlords. So, and you can't get it in pink or blue. It only comes in white, gray, or yellow. So, fuck gender.
There you go.
So yeah,
that could be another baby onesie, but maybe not.
What's that?
I said that could also be another baby onesie, but I don't know how. That's maybe a little abrupt for the baby to be just cursing right out of the gate.
That's what the conservatives put on there. I'm sure conservatives put fuck Joe Biden things and everything because, hey conservatives, you're not watching this, so whatever. So this week, Jess is here, and we are going to be talking about Pride. I know Jess has a couple talking points. I have stuff that I can talk about, but Jess, why don't you go first?
Okay. Hey everybody, happy to be back on the show. We are about halfway through June, and I know a lot of Pride events already happened. I think the one that... I just got a little bloop bloop in my ears, but it looks like everything's still on. I think the thing that's standing out to me... I think my internet is being a little wonky again, huh?
It's being wonky.
Okay. I tell you what, I'm gonna take a second and see if I can fix that.
Okay. We'll just cut this part out.
Okay. I know it's disruptive. I apologize, but I'm gonna try.
All I have to do is do a slice and then a slice in
okay, good.
the editing. Or I leave this in and
it could
people
just be au natural.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try this other network. If this doesn't work, then I'll put on my hotspot.
People are like, so you want us to donate to your Patreon, yet you're leaving shit like this in. Have you heard of editing? And yes, I have heard of editing. But this show's unscripted. It's raw. It's real.
So maybe leave it in. I think it's switched
maybe
already. Is this better?
You seem a little bit better, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, your video's kind of blurry, but I can hear you better. So,
okay.
And the video doesn't matter because it's Riverside and it uploads it from your computer. So,
all right.
I think.
All right. Well, we'll try this. Yeah, internet. The internet gods have not been smiling on me today, but hopefully that was the glitch, and now we're done.
I'm hoping. So I'm moving on Saturday, and so I'm going to try one of those T-Mobile home internet things. But my phone service is also T-Mobile, and I don't have a very good signal at my new house. So fingers crossed, because it's a lot cheaper than any of the internet options around here. It's $40 versus the cheapest one around here is $60. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I've had one of those before, like the little hotspot, right? But for at home.
Yeah, it's like a box or something.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully it'll be good. Mine is annoying. It's through the we don't have cable TV, but our internet is through like the cable provider, and it's like it's just like very intermittent. And plus, I'm in the basement, so I have to have a like a booster kind of
Mm,
deal.
yeah, I
So
get
it's
it.
like, yeah, it's you know, she can be a little bitchy, but you know, sometimes she
Ca-
gets through.
Cable companies are the devil. So,
It
hey,
happens.
T-Mobile, not a sponsor, but if this works, hey, you could be a sponsor,
You could be
especially
a
because you have that
sponsor.
15-day trial period. So,
Mm, good move. Yeah, and it's
yeah,
Pride Month, so I mean, come on, T-Mobile, what are you doing?
yeah, Pink, and I switched to you because you're not AT&T, who like is severely anti-trans from what I've heard. So I'm like, fuck them. I think they're getting sued for it too. So I'm
Wow.
like, I'll go T-Mobile. I'm pretty sure I heard that. I'm sure someone can fact check this if anyone cares enough. Anyways, back to what you're saying about Pride before the
Okay,
technical
so
glitch.
yeah, we're about halfway through Pride Month.
June 17th today.
Yes, yes, recording on a Monday, a little different, but
Hmm.
I know a lot of prides have already happened. I think LA Pride already happened. Um, I think that DC Pride has happened. The thing that stood out to me close to DC, not the same, is Baltimore Pride. Um, I don't know if you heard
Like
about
a
Baltimore
chemical
Pride.
weapon or something?
There was a chemical agent released during Baltimore Pride. I believe it was. Okay, I'm going to have to apologize a little bit because this may not be 100% accurate. I was trying to check it, but again, the internet is funky. But I believe, if I remember correctly, it was released Saturday night between like 8:30 and 9 p.m. at um, the near a stage, so where there was a crowd gathered. And it has been determined by law enforcement, apparently, or investigating bodies, that it was mace. And so it was affecting a lot of people. People were rinsing out their eyes. There was even a report of a child in a
Mm-hmm.
stroller who was having to have their eyes rinsed out around the same time that this chemical was dispersed. Someone set off fireworks, um, which scattered the crowd because people, I'm assuming, thought it was gunshots.
I mean, every Pride I go to, I'm afraid
That's
the shooter's going to show up.
Yeah. And well, yes, there is that. And I just also think, unfortunately, any public gathering where there is fireworks, even at this point, you're kind of like double checking yourself on that. Was that really a
Yeah.
firework? So yeah, this is, I mean, really sad and terrible that this is happening. There was a warning from the State Department, the U.S. State Department, that prides could be targeted, this year. I mean, I think that between the rhetoric being so escalated and the fact that it is an election year,
Yeah.
the interesting thing that I saw about the State Department warning was they were saying that it was a warning from a foreign terrorist organization. And it's like, I'm
Really?
sorry, not to say that some foreign organizations might meddle, but let's not put it past the non-foreign, the domestic
Mm-hmm.
terror groups to do something like this, because more likely in the US, that is often what it is. It's Proud Boys and it's, the like. So so yeah, that is, definitely very scary and intimidating for the whole community. And of course, like, my hearts are with anybody in Baltimore. I actually have some friends in Baltimore I need to check on personally, but this is where we are. And unfortunately in America, this is where we are anytime we go out in public, that we have to be like slightly concerned about this possibility. So being really like vigilant of everything, and really aware, and kind of having to take some additional considerations into, what kind of crowds do you want to go into, and if you see something, if something starts to feel funny, which of course it might not. It might just feel totally fine, and then it's not fine. But
Yeah. Then a fucking bomb blows up.
yeah,
It's.
yeah. So it's starting out this episode a little heavy, but that was like literally the news that I heard this morning.
I had just saw a little blip of that on something too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that really sucks. I have not heard of anything else really specific. that has happened from, Pride events this year, at least not so far. Knock on some wood there.
It's been
But
quiet in Ohio for the most part. At the Ashtabula, I think it was Ashtabula. It was one of them. There was a guy in like full black gear with sunglasses and a mask, wearing a press badge, and he had his phone on like a tripod thing with a cup holder with a bottle of water, so he's staying hydrated. Well done, good job. Um,
interesting.
but like he was recording like kids and stuff like that, and people were really skeeved out by it. Um, the wing that's all upset about drag shows, so there he is acting like a creeper recording kids. Um, I haven't heard any more details on him. The only thing I personally saw, like, I went to Cleveland Pride, I went to Stark Pride, and I went to Medina Pride. And the Cleveland one, I remember I was driving into town and I saw this guy wearing a MAGA hat and a black t-shirt that had like said "No homos" on the front. And then
Creative.
later on, I saw him on a corner, like kind of on a corner of Pride, and he had a loudspeaker kind of thing. Actually, I think it was a karaoke machine, honestly, with his little MAGA hat, and he was going on about how everyone's sinning. And then, like, the crowd just kind of gathered around him, and he disappeared. So,
Yeah, that's at least it was like one guy, that's nice. And you have really been getting around the Pride circuit in that case, huh? This is
yeah, I
your new
was,
role.
yeah. So I didn't actually really get to get around the Pride circuit. I was more behind a little table at the Pride circuit, but um, it's fun. I spoke at Stark Pride. Stark Pride, for anybody in an adjacent to Ohio area, go to Stark Pride next year. It is really, really, really good. Like, I went to Cleveland Pride and it was pretty chaotic. As soon as I got there, I had like an autistic like meltdown, and I was texting like the other people in the group, like, "Where are you? I don't know where to go. I don't know." I just shut the fuck down. And then once I was there and set up, I was fine. Um, but Stark was, this is only their third year at Stark. It's held in downtown Canton in a very red area. And it's so wonderful. The entertainment was just perfect. The vibe was amazing. They have bathrooms. Like, you go in, there's sinks, there's stalls. It's an entire separate building that was built last year. So there's bathrooms and not just porta potties. There's tons of food, there are tons of vendors. It was, I would say, as many people there as were at Cleveland Pride for the most part. Um, and it was just a super chill vibe. And so if you want a nice, chill, fun, um, warm Pride, and you're not too far from Ohio, do Stark Pride next year. I can't give them enough kudos for that event. It was absolutely just perfect. So
It's always great to see that, like some newer communities, excuse me, come on, with like Pride events. I mean, that is very cool, especially if they're growing that much in just a few years. Around where I am in Asheville, the Pride is later in the fall, and it's because it's just, it's so hot right now. I don't know if it's also has to do with like space booking in the city. There's like a lot of Asheville has a super duper busy summer. But I believe it's either in late September, early October. The date has kind of shifted a little bit, but there is always a contingent of local protesters. It's usually a handful of people. It's usually the exact same people who protest the Planned Parenthood. Um, so it's the same. Like they literally, like Saturday morning, they go to Planned Parenthood and protest anybody who's trying to get health care, and then Saturday afternoon they go down to Pride. And
and they tell us to get a job.
seriously, yeah, no, the amount of spare time that these folks have is really impressive. But
Mm-hmm.
it is generally so yeah. It's for us, for this community. It is unfortunately not just one guy, but it is a pretty small group, and they all are always just so very much outnumbered. And there's usually pretty good security. So there's usually like a pretty good buffer zone in between. Like they don't ever get inside any area or anything like that.
Which is good.
Yeah, but that's something that like, so, I mean, growing up in Atlanta Pride is amazing. Atlanta Pride is another one of those that used to be in June. When I was a teenager and first started going to Pride, it was in June.
That's hot.
It's so
temperature-wise.
It's so hot. It's also hot, not temperature-wise. It's also hot. It's just hot. There's like hot people everywhere. But
people are fun.
And they're scantily clad because it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at one of the biggest parks in the city, Piedmont Park. And I don't know, I think a lot of people have a lot of attachment to their first Pride, and I definitely have attachment to it because it was my first Pride, but also it's also just a really amazing Pride. So for quite a while, it was at Piedmont Park, which is this really huge park. So they have the whole area with the food trucks. They have the whole area with the vendors. They had the parade that I believe would end there, if I remember correctly. It would like end at that park. Then they just had a ton of green space, just enough green space for you to like have room, have your blanket, bring your bike, like come in with your, I mean, it was always really hard to find parking and then you had to walk forever, but then you were just like there for the day. Just an amazing spot. So now Atlanta Pride has moved to the fall as well, just because of the frickin' heat, which
it's
is
just
awesome.
smart. It's smart.
Yeah. And I believe, I'm pretty sure that it is back in Piedmont Park. For a little while, they moved it to another location, and it was basically like a massive parking lot. It was like around like a civic center or something. And it was like, I think even in the fall, it was just like, it was still hot and it was just like not pleasant and it wasn't cool and just not cool.
It's a parking lot.
Not cool. It just was a shitty area, right?
Yeah.
But I believe it's back at Piedmont Park. In fact, we might consider going this fall. So I have not made it to a summer Pride. I don't know if I will this year, but I know it's happening. It's awesome. I know, especially other folks in the Northeast, I believe Providence Pride happened up in Rhode Island, which I heard some really good things about Providence Pride as well. So yeah, I know that is all happening. And I believe, I can try to look it up. Let me see if my internet will. I believe that San Francisco Pride may not have happened yet. A lot of times that's the last one.
That one's probably pretty epic. I would hope so.
Okay, San Francisco Pride is awesome.
Yeah.
San Francisco Pride is so huge that, that's right. That's right. Yes. Okay. San Francisco Pride is the very end of June. So it's the last. So it's not even this weekend coming up. I believe it's the following weekend. It's spread out. Understandable because that community is massive.
Yeah.
There is a whole vendor area and an area downtown in the Civic Center. The parade route is super long. They actually have bleachers and stuff along the parade route because it's that big.
That's big.
I went there in, oh my goodness, I think it was 2018 that Kamala Harris was actually there and was like marching, for a while, which was really cool, in her like rainbow sequin jacket. There are some photos of her online in this jacket. It was really, really awesome. And I saw her. We were in the bleachers, so we were not super close, but I saw her. Maybe that was actually 2019. Then the area at Civic Center is huge, but the gem of San Francisco Pride that any local San Francisco person would tell you, I believe Taryn would 100% concur with this, is that Dolores Park is a big park there. It's not super close to the other areas, and you kind of easier to have a car to get over there, but public transit is still pretty good. But the Dyke March, the Trans March, which I believe usually are on separate days. Like usually Trans March is like Friday night and Dyke March is Saturday night, or something like that. Saturday, Sunday, they're separate days. But those are more of the park hang. They still have a stage, but it's not like a super massive stage, but they still have a stage and they have a park hang, and so like it's kind of like stuff is spread out around the whole city, which is different.
That's
totally
cool.
Different experience. Yeah, from like where I am now, which is like everything is really in this like in the square, But yeah, I mean, love Pride all around. I'll stop advertising for all the Prides I've been to now, but
no, it's
both
good.
of those are really amazing.
Well, this is an episode about Pride, and you're educating people on Prides to go to.
That's right. 100% San Francisco is good. Atlanta's good.
I'm worried about Akron's pride. So there's a little bit of drama going on here in Ohio. Akron is the most major city north of me. So, like, if you're looking at Ohio, there's Cleveland up on the lake. Akron is like 40 miles south. And then I am another like 25 miles southwest of Akron. Um, but over the weekend, we were supposed to have there's supposed to be a bunch of Juneteenth events. And an announcement came out literally in some cases 1 hour before the event was supposed to start saying that it was canceled. So like all these vendors are like out of all the money, and all these people, like people travel from out of state to come to it, all screwed. And from what I've heard, I watched a video by I'm not sure if she's a current or former Akron council person, but there was a guy, a councilman. We're definitely going to go man. I'm pretty sure he's, an old white boomer, but even if he's not, he's an old white boomer. I don't have a filter, do I? So he had gotten into, he was in argument with a couple of his constituents, some younger black men, I believe, like a safety thing that they were concerned about, and he felt cornered, and he got his undies in a bunch and wound up joining together with another council person and then bringing in 6 more to write a letter saying that they were concerned about safety on these events and that they need to be canceled immediately. But they also talked that there was no credible threat to any of this. And if you know anything about Akron, it's not a safe town, especially if you're a black person and a cop is around. It's one of those cities. But neighborhoods take care of themselves there too. And these are neighborhood celebrations, and they were really important to a lot of people. And there's a lot of really pissed off people. I wouldn't be surprised if the news of this starts branching out and getting bigger, and it might pop up on national news sooner or later. I hope it does, because this kind of thing needs to be exposed. Like, this guy was voted into office, and it doesn't sound like he's representing his constituents, which is definitely a very common problem we have in this country. So, but yeah, that a dramatic thing going down near Vanessa.
That really sucks. I mean, it's terrible for those celebrations to have to be canceled, for all the vendors, just for the whole community to like lose that. That's really shitty.
People are like, "Are you going to cancel July 4th then, since you're canceling Juneteenth?"
Totally. See, that's where it starts to get into, like, on the one hand, if there was a really credible threat right before an event, sure, it may be in the best interest of safety to cancel it, On the other hand, if there's no credible threat, or like they're not explaining it, or they can't handle the security for Juneteenth, but they can handle the security for July 4th, for instance, then it starts to get into like, okay, what are the real priorities here? What's going on? So, yeah, that is really unfortunate. We are, I was actually just looking up Juneteenth events around here, because in this city there are different Juneteenth is like, it changes a little bit every year, how the celebrations go. Some different organizations in a couple different parts of the small city where I am. But last year there was actually a shooting really close to a celebration. And it's not, they are still having celebrations, but it's different. And it's been different every year. Like, I kind of think the city's trying to figure it out. But I did wonder if they were not having it at the same location they had it last year because of what happened. I don't know. So yeah, who knows? I mean, again, it is on the one hand, it is really tricky, and you want to keep people safe. But yeah, on the other hand, we need to be able to celebrate these different holidays. whether it's Juneteenth or Pride or July 4th for whoever celebrates those different holidays.
I personally think Juneteenth is far more important than July 4th to this country, but whatever. That's one girl's opinion.
Yeah. It's definitely a more impressive mark in history, at least by some standards.
It wasn't taught in school. I didn't learn about Juneteenth until I was an adult. I didn't even learn about it in college. So, which is a crime. Absolute crime. But it's whitewashing of history. The point I was trying to make with the whole Akron thing. Akron's Pride is like August 24th for some reason. And I'm hoping that it doesn't get canceled too. So, because it's a pretty big one.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully it won't. There was a Pride celebration at a city just south of where we are, and we decided not to go. I kind of was a little torn because I want to support these really small cities around here doing it, but I also that particular one is one where I'm sure that same group of protesters will just go around their circuit because it's local enough, and I just wasn't quite sure. And plus it's a much less diverse, more white boomer town, and we just weren't quite feeling it. But I do feel torn. I feel torn about this. Okay, so this can get us into the discourse though, because one of the reasons why I was a little hesitant was because we would have taken our kid, and I didn't really. It's not that I don't we take our kid to Pride. We're happy to, and we're again considering going to Atlanta Pride this year. We'll definitely take our kid. We'll definitely go to the Pride in town with our kid. And this Pride in town is it's a more family friendly Pride. Anything that is not family friendly is, as it is at most Prides that I would say really honestly at any Prides that I've seen. I personally don't think there's anything during the daytime in those really big public events that is not okay for my kid to see. Yes, sometimes people are more scantily clad. That is something that can be talked about, if the opportunity comes up. That's fine. That's, a way that some people
express themselves,
celebrate their freedom. And that's part of it. Right. Hey, it was kind of like Mardi Gras in a different way. Right. But so I don't have an issue with that. Anything that's really going to be kind of what I would say is not appropriate for kids is going to happen at a club at night, and my kid is going to be in bed asleep, and that's just it's not a concern. My kid did see drag. There was drag at this Pride. That was actually the first drag that he was able to see, which is cool.
That's so cool.
I think it was last year. Maybe it was last year and I don't know. The years kind of run together in my head. I'm not sure.
I know.
But yeah, he definitely saw his first drag queen was there, and so they did some drag at just the outdoor stages and areas, which was awesome, and he loved it, and that was really wonderful to have that exposure for him. But there has been one thing that I thought we could talk a little bit about was all the discourse around Pride. So I think there's been a few subjects of discourse around Pride. And one of them is the whole, do you want to take your kid to Pride? And with this little town Pride, the small town south of where we are that we decided not to go recently, there certainly would not have been anything inappropriate for a kid, but I just didn't really want to, it does take a certain amount of energy to get a kid out the door and to an activity and manage, in addition to managing your own energy and thirst levels and hunger levels and all of that, dealing with that with, a young kid is a whole other ball of energy, a whole nother task to take on too. And I just wasn't up for it at the time, which is why I was I'm just going to wait for the Pride in town. But this whole conversation around, do you want, is it okay to take kids to Pride or not to Pride? What do you think about this? Have you seen this?
I don't know how much of it I've seen. Personally, we took my kid to the first Dark Pride. We did not go last year because we were afraid of something violent popping up. And we did obviously don't like him exposed to that.
Yeah.
And this year I actually spoke at my Pride on stage. So my kid's other mother said that she would try to bring him, and she did. Uh, After I spoke, and they were just walking around, he was playing in bouncy castles and stuff. But I think, when it comes to kid appropriateness, like during the day, as you said, Pride it's much more family friendly. Yeah, you're going to see some tits. I saw some glorious tits. And but my kid's seen my tits. It's just what happens. And if you don't make a big deal out of it, it's not a big deal. So, but like, if there were people like actually like imitating sex on stage or something, that might give me a little bit more of a pause with him, because he's young, and but it's overall, none of the prides I've been to were in any way not family friendly. In fact, they were actively family friendly with stuff for the kids to do. And, all the vendors had a bunch of stuff to give away to kids. Like, we had flags and stickers, and, just, you'd see kids walking around with like flags and all kinds of fun things just sticking out of their hair and just having a blast. So it's, if you're a kid at Pride, it's colorful. There's a bunch of interesting looking people, a bunch of people wearing really cool, wild, fun outfits, a lot of people that are really happy, and there's just a good vibe to it. So I personally think bringing kids to Pride I encourage it. The only thing that gives me pause really is some mega idiot showing up with a gun. Transcending Humanity has joined the Feminist Podcast Collective, and we will be exchanging ads on each other's shows in order to grow our mutual following. Here's one for this week.
Let's face it, we're all going to face loss one day, be it a loved one, a job, a pet, a home, or a sense of self and security, or my keys. Again? But grief is going to hit us all someday. Hi, welcome to Good Grief, a podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief and loss with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. On this podcast, we will get down and dirty with all things grief-related and hopefully learn a thing or two about living with loss and coping with grief and the grieving. You might laugh, you might cry, but hopefully you'll just feel a little less alone. Tune in each week to learn all about grief, meet some special guests, and learn that grief doesn't always have to suck.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's a lot of times what ends up, that is what has shut down a lot of like drag queen story hours and stuff, right? Even the things that are specifically for kids, but then they get shut down just because of the amount of threats against them. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I even remember, even in San Francisco, which again obviously has just the quantity of queer people, the quantity of people period is so much larger there, so much more densely populated, and then the quantity of queer, there's a lot of queer people there, and they're very out, and it's a very mixed crowd. It is just a super duper mixed crowd, but I would say that like actually in San Francisco it was always Folsom Street Fair, which is the leather fair. That is far less kid appropriate, just like as far as like who's walking around on the street.
Yeah.
It's like, like you said at Pride, it's like there may be some scantily clad, there may be a little, there may be some boobs out. There may be some chest harnesses or something. There may be a little bit of, a little like flash of leather, but it's not generally really anything that I think would be, I'd kind of rather like my kid be exposed to that with me around, maybe the first time anyway, and not have it be like a huge deal. But so that's okay, the kids and the kink is one of some of the discourse conversation that's been going around. Then the other whole discourse conversation, and there's been so much online discourse around this, And I feel like I didn't really pay attention to the online discourse like in previous years. I just don't think I was involved in it to notice it, but apparently it has been going on for quite a while. This is not the first year that there has been a bunch of opinionated queer folks talking about Pride and what they think of it, and who should go and who shouldn't go, and what should be there and what shouldn't be there. But there was so much discourse about it that there were actually articles written about the discourse that were published in magazines. I believe it was for them or them. For them. One of those.
I think it's just them.
Maybe it's them.
Yeah, them, period, I think.
Yes. I believe that them. Sorry, I had to get that pun in there.
Nice.
Put out an article about the discourse. So here we are having discourse on the discourse. The main one this year has been, if you're a bisexual woman and you have a cishet boyfriend, is it okay for him to go to Pride? Although I don't necessarily think that was how it started, because I believe it started from some other origins. There's a lot of I think it's also really hard to kind of figure out exactly where the conversation started and who was having it and what was it about, because I think there's a lot of levels of this conversation that you can have, right? But the main point of the article written by them was that the queer community in general has far bigger fish to fry than to really be too concerned about Chad or whoever showing up at the Pride parade with his bisexual girlfriend. And
yeah, it doesn't sound like a big deal to me at all. Pride, everyone's welcome to Pride as long as they're not an asshole. So
that's the idea, right? Yes. So that's the idea. I'm saying this from the perspective of them. I also agree with this idea, of just this is not really this is not the hill that I will die on. This is not really of that much interest. If Chad's gonna come, he better be chill, and if he's not, then he's gonna get put in his place. And it'll be handled, and it's not that big of a deal. The protesters need to either stay home or stay on the outside. The cops need to be respectful and ideally hardly visible or not visible, and not on the inside. The cops should be the ones in between the protesters and the people celebrating Pride, right?
Because Pride is a protest against police.
This is true.
Mm-hmm.
This is so true. So not really inside. That's not cool. I think that it would be definitely better if the cops stay out. And I will say that here, and what I've noticed, can't speak for all the different prides, obviously, but I've noticed that there's Pride has its own security team that's not the cops, right? So it's a different this. It's the security team is more on the inside of the group, right? They may be checking the perimeters and stuff like that, kind of seeing who's getting further in and all in communication. But yeah, beyond that, I think that it's people who are supportive, in my book, are welcome if they're going to be supportive and want to experience the queer community and queer culture, and that's great. At the larger public events, and if it is a specific event for a specific subset of the community, then that needs to be respected too. If it's a lesbian event, if it's an event for Black and brown folks, that all needs to be respected, right? But other than that, everybody's welcome. Parents are welcome. Neighbors are welcome if they want to check it out, and they're open to it. And even the straight guys, if they're not going to mind getting hit on and maybe want to consider alternative lifestyles or whatever.
Give it if they're just going to support a friend or family member, what is it from the Kingsman? Manners maketh man. Um, it's pretty simple. Just be nice, and enjoy yourself and support whoever you're there with. If you're there as an ally. So, because allies are welcome too. I saw I forget where it was, maybe on Reddit or something, but a guy was like, is it disrespectful if my wife and we're a cishet married couple? Is it disrespectful if we show up to Pride's wearing free mom hugs and free dad hugs shirts? And people are like, it's not disrespectful at all. You're welcome. Like when I was at Pride's and I saw people in those shirts, it warmed my heart because I know I come from such an unaccepting family. So many other people do too. That hug from one of them could honestly save a life. So yes, you have a place there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely support people being that supportive, and wanting to do that. And I think that that's really nice. I love those people in general in public who'll put the like free hug shirt on, for people who like it. And I think I saw this online, and I saw a comment on this that I really liked, which was somebody saying, that's actually, in their opinion, a little more in bounds than saying like, if you don't have your family anymore, like I'm your dad now or I'm your mom now, because honestly, that's not really something you're really going to be able to, if you're a stranger, like you're not really, it's a wonderful sentiment, right? The feeling behind it is very nice and warm, but you're not really going to be able to like be in somebody's life in that supportive way. And kind of in that way, it might even kind of like twist the knife a little bit, but saying
it's thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. It's like, it's kind of like, I wish you had an accepting family, but it's like, if you're not actively in somebody's life and really part of somebody's chosen family, then maybe don't make that statement. But being able to say like, hey, maybe, some queer folks are estranged from their family. Some not queer. Some people who aren't queer. Oh, I hear Gabby's talking. Even some folks who are not queer are no contact with their families. But yes, especially for people in the queer community who are no contact with their families. If somebody wants to show up and give free mugs, that's really sweet and totally appreciated. And somebody might not have had a hug from their mom or dad in a really long time. And even though it's not their mom or dad, that still is really appreciated. So I love that. I think that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I still just think that like, yeah, even if it's friends, and they just want to go because like, I've had straight friends who like to hang out at the gay club. I mean, I used to work in, this is different again, but when I was in San Francisco, I used to work in a bar on the edge of the Castro. And it was a very mixed bar, and again, it's like so freaking liberal out there. Like it's just, the whole culture is so mixed and so diverse and it's amazing. But it was it's like, it was not a gay bar. It was not a straight bar. It was like just a very mixed bar. We had nights that were taken over by different factions, kind of, of the different, we definitely had some really amazing, nights where some of them were like music takeovers, DJ takeovers, and some of them were like totally like boys in Speedos dancing on the bar and whatever. Those were some of the best. Those were actually, they were called Big Top. That party was called Big Top, that particular one. Anyway, but it was just very like, if you were there, you just needed to be very open, and that was cool. So I love that vibe. I did also find interesting in this discourse, though, that other people have counted out this whole theoretical bisexual woman who has a cis boyfriend who is considering going to Pride with their cis boyfriend. That like, it's like, can we flip that and say, okay, what if it's a bisexual guy who has a cis girlfriend? Why are we not talking about that more? Like, why is that not a, and I get it because there is a huge reason why it's like why we choose the bear, right?
Misogyny.
not expecting it so much. And, cis heterosexual men invading queer spaces is kind of speaking of the origins of Pride as a protest, and queer people not being able to gather legally and without potential safety repercussions and life repercussions is like the whole reason why this started. So yes, of course there is sensitivity around cis heterosexual men invading queer space, right? And just a little, and those guys need to be aware of that. And in my book, they can still come, but they just need to be aware that it is not their party. They can hang with the party, but they didn't make it.
They have to remember that ally is a title that is given. It is not a title that you give yourself.
I like that. I think that's cool.
I don't know where I heard that, but I use it a lot now. It's earned, if you call yourself an ally, but you don't do anything to support that, if a true ally will continue to have your back when you are not in the room, they will continue to defend you. A true ally will put themselves in the same harm's way that we are in all the time. That's what a true ally does. That's why it's a title that's earned.
Totally agreed.
Get some words of wisdom on this podcast. Yeah. But that's a silly discourse to just start. I don't know.
I mean, I do think that the bigger, I do think that we have bigger fish to fry as far as external people who are outside of the community, people who are unquestionably not queer, who are anti-queer, whether some of them are anti-trans and some of them are probably also, I'm going to venture to say, homophobic. I don't know if I would meet anybody in this current culture who is homophobic, who is not also anti-trans, but who knows? I'm sure there's possibilities. I definitely think that's I think that's a bigger concern, and we need the whole we need all the help we can get. We need to stick together. We need to stand together, all of that, of course, right? And trans folks specifically are just under so much I don't know what to say, not scrutiny is not the right word, but yes,
attack.
Just under
Pure
such
attack,
legislatively, legally, very much, and that is obviously a bigger, as there is the intersection of
bigotry,
right? Yeah, as there is the intersection of bigotry,
intersectional bigotry.
How many levels of bigotry can you experience, right? And obviously people who are lacking melanin, like ourselves, right? White folks have privilege attached to that that needs to be
exceedingly high amounts of privilege
that absolutely needs to be recognized. That is just part of our culture and the systems within it. And men, and even more so cis men, right? So all of that is totally legit and important to recognize as well, especially in these times where the community is under attack. It is the most vulnerable, the most bigoted, the intersections of bigotry, right? And the people who are experiencing the most of that are Black and brown trans women, right? So that's always important to recognize and remember. As one of the leaders of the beginning of Pride, Marsha Johnson
was a Black trans woman.
She was. And we celebrate her legacy and appreciate all of that. So that's all really important. On the scope of legislative attacks, switching gears a little bit of good news outside of Pride stuff. there was a big ruling that came down from Florida. Did you hear about this last week? Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah, that was major
major
good
good news.
news.
And what I was trying to look up, that I didn't quite get to, but I was kind of curious because, so to make sure all our listeners are caught up to this, which a lot of them probably are. But there was I believe it was the 19th Circuit Court, throughout. Not sure if it was 19th. It was a federal court, ruled that Florida's restrictions on gender affirming treatment, gender affirming care for children, and some parts of the restrictions on gender affirming care for adults were struck down as unconstitutional. Just kind of a little bit from my memory on this. I think one of the things was just the judges basically said that you can't write law on morals. Like you can't legislate morality. If you disagree with something, you can disagree with it, but that doesn't mean that you can not allow somebody to have it. And I think specifically with the adult care that they were having an issue with, they were saying that, because one of the things that Florida did was they made it so that, if I remember correctly, they made it so that nurse practitioners, who were the most common healthcare worker to prescribe or administer gender affirming care in the form of HRT, right, hormone replacement therapy, hormone treatments, they were saying that those MPs couldn't do it anymore. It had to be doctors. And so that just really, that was what really shifted. And I believe that the way that this ruling came down was they basically said, you can't say that nurse practitioners can't do this when they can do all this other stuff. And there's really no reason that you're not, like, there's no basis why you're saying that NPs can't do this other than that you're obviously just trying to make it hard for trans adults to get care.
Yeah, I think there's like one person can get hormones to treat something, but a trans person can't. It's just flat out discrimination. I believe he even, I don't remember the exact wording, but I believe he even called the laws out as just being mean or something along those, or cruel. And because they are. I think also in Florida for adults, if you were on Medicare, they took away any HRT. So
that makes sense. So it was a really strong ruling and a big win as far as that battle. What I have not been able to catch up on quite yet is I'm not sure what that means about like, does care change? Like, does that mean that people are accessing care again this week? You know what I mean? Does that, like, when does that go into effect? Or, what does that mean for folks in Florida? Some of our listeners might know, and I need to do some research on it. And hey, if you know and you feel like writing in, then like let us know what it's like on the ground there, please. But
please.
But yeah, I'm curious because I know that some people were. I mean, we know that some people left Florida because of this, and some other people were having to stop care. Some people might have been considering traveling in order to continue to get care in different states, much like people who are seeking abortion are having to do in a lot of cases. So that was a big ruling that came down. I do also think that this, the flip side of that, and the reason why I was phrasing it as the battle, is because I do think that this continues to, I mean, obviously the state of Florida and Ron DeSantis is going to push back on this. And are they going to try to elevate it, up to, is this part of the process of eventually getting it in front of the Supreme Court? So.
Yeah, I know he said he's going to appeal
Sure.
it. That boy is so stuck in the closet. It's
really rough.
Crazy.
And he had such a terrible presidential candidacy run that I know he's really, I'm sure really, really butthurt right now.
My heart is broken for that absolute piece of. I don't have words.
No words.
I don't.
No words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, just something to be aware of, just in case anybody didn't know. And I think that was I was of course happy to see that ruling, but also a little bit. I always feel now, unfortunately, like this is great for now.
But when's the other shoe going to drop?
And what's going to happen next? It does seem like there's been some talk, and I know that one of our favorite places to get trans news, Aaron Reed, has reported that in several different states this last legislative session there was really kind of a loss in momentum, major loss in momentum. One of those states was Florida. Where a lot of bills, I believe there was also New Hampshire. There were several states in which this happened. There were a lot of bills that died at the end of the session, or just were not, at least were not moved forward. They didn't really have any progress. And in fact, it seemed like compared to the last few years, a lot less really kind of made it further down the legislative pike there. But it's definitely still an incredibly alarming number of bills that are being introduced that are anti-trans bills and anti-queer bills. And I think in that regard, obviously it is the trans kids that are that are in the worst position.
They're under siege,
especially in certain states. And then with trans adults very closely behind them. So,
yeah, the gender-affirming care ban in Ohio keeps getting blocked too, which is good. A couple notes on Erin, actually. Erin Reed. One, she wrote about some polling data that showed like Republican voters aren't interested in anything about trans people. It's not even on their radar. And they're frustrated because it's just this entire agenda. The same thing happened, with gay panic. And it just, that's one thing that I think the judge said. Someone said it. I think it was the judge. He said that this is just the latest fad and it's just going to disappear. Like, just like it was with the fad was like going against trans people, just like it was against gay people. I think it was that judge or something else I read. But I want to send a quick note out to Erin. I don't know if you listen to the show or not, but I'm so sorry to hear about your mom. Erin's mom passed, and it's heartbreaking. So we're here for you and your family. And yeah, I'm sorry. But so yeah, on that downer.
On that downer, that is very sad. But I sometimes find it hard to read all of Erin's work when it comes out because she publishes so much, and I try to keep up on it very much.
It's overwhelming.
I think I believe the last thing that I read was about the Florida case, or maybe it was the thing about. I believe it was that poll about Republicans that you're mentioning. I believe it was like 76% was the percentage of people who said like we're really not interested in this.
It's major.
I obviously I did not know that personal news, and so I need to catch up a little bit. But
for those that don't know, Erin Reed is an independent reporter. She's engaged to Zoe Zephyr, who is a Montana State House rep that has been in the news for being bullied by Republicans. But Erin, I would say she is the source for all news trans and trans adjacent, and her reporting helps so many people. I'm sure it's saved lives, and I'm sure it's a lot of it is very hard to read because any news around trans people tends to be pretty depressing. But she's always makes a point to share good news whenever it comes up to try to stay up with things. But because I know we have cis listeners, we have het listeners, just anybody listening to the show. if you want to know what's really going on in this community and why trans people are so fucking terrified all the time, and why you hear me talking about comparing the Republicans to the Nazis, go read Erin's stuff. It's legit. A lot of her reporting is on what's going on state legislatures across the country. And you can just see it's a nonstop, just deluge of hate being thrown against us. And she's doing everything she can to get the word out there. She even creates maps to show which states are safer and which states you shouldn't go to when you're trans. Yep. So sorry for the aside there. I wanted to throw it in.
I believe her Substack is Erin in the Morning. And you can just like subscribe to her newsletter directly there. She will, once you subscribe, you'll get articles emailed directly to you. Really great. And yes, the maps are really helpful. I know she started to create those maps because she was getting people asking her when they were considering moving or even traveling, trying to understand what states were safer. And I believe that at this point, she actually has an adult map and a trans youth map.
Yeah, there's two separate ones. And she's not paywalled either. When you go to her Substack, it does pop up saying that please donate it if you're able to, but donations from our readers make it so people that can't afford to donate can still read the articles. So she makes sure that nothing's behind a paywall.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, which is really awesome. I'm a paid subscriber at this point just because I want to support her, but it is also only like it's like $5 a month. It's like very
exactly. It's like, not much
for the amount of news that comes out. It is incredible.
It's the best deal for media.
But I know Gabby's got a lot to say this evening.
This is my last week. The last week that you're going to see this purple background because I got my own place. And so Gabby and my son's other mother's dog, they've lived together for 4 years, but Gabby is a people dog and not a dog. So she attacks her dog all the time. And there's this jealousy thing that whenever Gabby hears the other dog, she just loses her absolute shit. And I can't wait to not have to hear that screaming all the time and just be able to just cuddle with my puppy rather than hear her scream. So yeah, they just got back from a walk. So if you're wondering, people watching this are wondering why I was looking down earlier, is because my kid's other mom was asking me if I want to go on a walk. So I'm like, no, I'm podcasting.
Well, that's very exciting that you're about to get to your new place. That's really wonderful. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about your settling in and everything. If that goes well. You've already been over there and everything. I saw some posts or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I brought my dog over there. It's just a tiny little house, and
that's
it's
perfect for one person.
Exactly. And there's a second floor, but it's not really air conditioned. And I told the landlord, because she's moving all of her like in-laws. The landlord is one of my clients for photography, an absolute wonderful woman. She's never been a landlord before. She's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, we'll figure it out. But so like there's a bunch of stuff up in that like second floor of like family heirlooms and crap. I'm like, just leave it there. I don't care. So when I'm out and you eventually want to sell the house, whatever, but it's not hurting anything and I'm not going to use it. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's just a cute little house and it's gonna be my little queer paradise. So
that's awesome. And it's so great that you didn't, that you found a place that is not super far.
Yeah, it's only 15 minutes away from here. So yeah.
Awesome.
I'm pumped. Well, we just had the size of we're an hour in.
That's it. I think that was our timer.
Yeah. I think we're both like, okay. So yeah, we're still halfway through Pride Month. This episode will be released on whatever Thursday is, the 20th. And show up to your prides, and if you want, if you're neurodivergent and autistic, invest in some loop earplugs. They will help. The Cleveland one was getting pretty rowdy at the end, and I had to put them in. but it just kind of helps us tune things down. So Loop, not a sponsor, but you could be
Loop. And I am, if this helps, Loop, if you're listening, I am actually considering getting a pair of Loop as well, because I have not been tested for any neurodivergencies, but I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. But I have, I definitely have a lot of noise sensitivity that I have noticed a lot, especially since I have a young kid who has a very, wide range of volume and all the things that come along with kids that are very loud. So it has just been something that I've been working on. And at certain points, I get really, really sensitive to the noise. And I've always been sensitive to the noise out and about in public. I definitely get really overwhelmed by that. So I've been looking at, I know they have a few different kinds of, there's different kinds for different reasons. There is one, though, that is like what you're describing, of the one where you're not trying to do noise canceling, but it's like a noise reduction, or it kind of calms things down a little bit more. And that's,
I think they might even be called Calm.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Those are the ones I need to look into those. I want to give those a try, because I sometimes just have to limit my time at big, loud events because of that. Or like even at home, I just need to be like, I gotta go in a quiet room for a little while. So
I've worn them while my kid was melting down, and it helps. I mean, you can still hear, like, I was wearing them at the Cleveland Pride, and still having conversations with people, but it takes that edge off. Loop, if you're listening, the one thing you need to do, your cases fucking suck. They are hard to open. And when you're having an autistic episode, and you can't get that damn fucking thing open, it's aggravating. Try a better case, please.
Suggestion for Loop. Yes. And feel free to contact us to be a sponsor.
Yeah. For all the Loop people that aren't listening to this. So, yeah. We do have a new Patreon subscriber. Thank you, Lucy. She's also been supporting Ohio Equal Rights. Nice. So, it's all, it's all big stuff to us. And Lucy's been kind of like a champion for me on LinkedIn. She always has nice and supportive things to say, and she's helping with my job hunt. And so, yeah, there's an ally right there. So, and thank you to the rest of our supporters. And again, anyone else listening, seriously, like $5 a month, it would really help. If I had 40 subscribers, the show would pay for itself. If I had more subscribers for that, it would more than pay for itself. I eventually would really like to have this show get bigger and have an impact on as many people's lives as possible, because the feedback I've received from it, I don't know what you hear, Jess, on it, but the feedback I receive is really positive, and it's makes me feel good, because a lot of times I don't feel very good about the show. Like, I'm like, oh, I don't know if it's helping anybody. But then people are like, it's really, like, I learned a lot. It helps a lot. So, I want to keep at this.
It's really important to have the representation, and I mean, I think this is a really fun show because of the collaborative nature of it. I love being able to be a co-host, and and I also love it that there's like a group of us, and it's not it's not like, it doesn't feel overwhelming, and it really we're able to provide a pretty diverse perspective. Hopefully, could be more diverse. We could definitely work on that. Would love to, to get more co-hosts, and through different
that aren't as pale,
that don't lack melanin. And, yes. Well, that would be great. Absolutely, because there needs to be more representation of folks who are not white. In the trans community specifically, speaking of, so everywhere. Yes,
everywhere.
Every place.
Diversity, DEI starts and ends with race. Period. Starts and ends with race. So we're guilty of it here, of not having enough diversity. And
it would also be something we could work on a bit more with more subscribers, because at some point we actually might be able to, if we get to a certain level, we might actually be able to pay people to be on the show, versus just having to volunteer our time, which like obviously some of us are happy to do. I'm stoked to do it. I love it. But you know, it is a lot if we're asking folks. And so, yeah, that's something to consider. Yes, please support the show. And
it would make
yes.
us happy.
And write in and tell us what you think. And
yeah. I got us a blue check on Instagram to hopefully increase our reach. It's fun. Like getting a blue check as a organization or as a company is harder. The only way I was able to do it is because they needed a picture of you, like the actual you and your name on it. I'm like, well, this is a company. Like, I wanted to just do it as a company, but apparently I couldn't do it that way. So that's why if you're seeing on socials, it says Transcending Humanity with Vanessa Joy. Yeah, I do have a big ego, but it's not specifically because of my ego. It's so I could get that blue check in order to help reach. So if you're wondering why my face is now with it and it says with Vanessa Joy.
Well, you are the fabulous executive producer and you know, undoubtedly the leader of this wonderful collaboration. So, I mean,
and I have an ego.
Sure. And
ask my people at Ohio who writes if I have an ego. Yeah, I have an ego.
And Meta wants to make sure that you are who man. So yes, so that is true as well. Who man, female. Yeah. So there's a tip if you have a company and you want to get a blue check with it. Getting a blue check with anything is pain in the ass. Did I ever tell you my TikTok story about verification? Okay, I've tried a couple times, and so I submitted articles about myself from Washington Post, AP, and New York Times. And both times they came back telling me that I needed to use articles from prestigious news organizations. Now, I really don't think there's a news organization more prestigious than the AP. Yeah.
Because that's the entire kind of fucking point. New York Times, okay, you can go back and forth. WAPO, yeah, they're trying to get taken over by conservatives. But still, I would call them both prestigious.
Like it's not like, what is that? Like the New York Post or whatever there's some other ones that are like really.
Yeah, one of them is.
Yeah,
one of those.
That's wild.
But
yeah, that kind of verification stuff is kind of weird. I could never figure out. Back when I was in like 2022 or 2023, when I was job searching, I tried to get on, it was one of the lesbian dating apps, and I got blocked, and I couldn't figure out why. Like they wouldn't let me on because they couldn't verify that I was a woman. I don't know why. I was like, okay, this was like early in, and I didn't even necessarily think I was trying to pretend that I was a woman, but I do think that they were trying to block men from doing it, which is not why I'm saying I was blocked. I don't know. I gave up because the whole reason I was even looking into it was because they had a job, not because I was looking to join the dating site. Not that I have any issue with people joining those dating sites, but that's not like I'm married and monogamous and have no need to be on there. So I was actually like trying to check out the platform. So I was trying to get an account. Yeah. To get the vibe. And I remember that they asked they wanted a picture, and whatever picture I sent in, it wasn't like, and I don't know if it was like, I don't know what it was. I do not know what it was that like did not allow me to go on, because they certainly were not trying to say that it could only be cis folks on there. Like, I think that they were definitely like non-binary and trans friendly. But they were very explicit that they were trying to, that men were not welcome on the site, that cis men were not welcome on the site. So anyway, I don't know, but it was too much and I couldn't deal with it. And I was like, this is too hard and this is probably not going to work anyway. So I just gave up. So yeah, sometimes. But
also strangely gender affirming, maybe.
In a weird way. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. It's true. But.
Another note, for blue checks, on Meta platforms, you can pay for them, and that's what I do. And I also, my Facebook posts are monetized, so in the end, it all kind of like evens out. So if you want to do a blue check, get your page like monetized first, so your posts actually start earning a little bit of money, and then it all kind of evens itself out. And I've definitely found better reach when I have it turned on than when I have it turned off. Especially when you comment on things, because it stands out more. And it's just a nice little way to just kind of build up. And yeah, you have to pay for it, but if you can get the money back from Facebook, right? Do it.
If you can have it pay for itself, absolutely.
Little advice.
Yeah, all the ins and outs of social media are like, it's a lot, and it's like constantly changing.
Yeah,
it's a lot to learn. So I love it that you are so into that, because I know a wee little bit about it, and I'm like, I can't, it's too much.
I don't know shit. Like right now, with Ohio Equal Rights, we're trying to build up the social media, and we have a Gen Z in charge of it, with the other co-executive director. And like, she made a TikTok video and it got 5 views on TikTok, 5. And like nothing's going anywhere. Probably partially because we're a PAC, but I don't know. We need someone that's smarter at social media than we are, but we also can't afford to pay someone for that. So we're just kind of winging it, I suppose.
Yeah, I know enough to just know that it can be really tricky, and they're constantly changing the algorithms and everything, and it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with. But
it is.
Yeah, except for I do know that comments drive engagement. That's about it. That's about all I've got.
Yeah. Some things I've learned, like on Instagram, when people comment, you want to start a post that's engaging. So it has to be controversial, or start with a question, something to get people to read more. I'm actually testing it right now with my Instagram page. I've been posting some pretty deep shit and starting with like a question there in order to kind of see how the engagement works with it. And even now still though, like most of the insights, like it's like 98% of the people are followers and like 1% or 2% aren't. So even then, I don't know. But from what I've learned, when people comment on your stuff, respond, but don't just respond with like an emoji. You want to respond with something engaging, and even asking another question to have them respond to you again. And for me personally, I hate that because I don't like talking to, like, I hate it when people message me. Like when people send me a DM off of my like stories or something like that. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to be social. But it's how you work with the algorithm for like comments on posts. So if you want your posts to grow, you need to, it's just like creating TikTok videos or reels. You have to have a hook to get people to want to engage with it. And once they start commenting and you start commenting back, that's when the algorithm will start to understand that maybe this is something for it to look at and push out to more people. I don't really know how well it works, but that's what I've learned. That's your crash course on
social media tips.
Social media.
Okay.
Yeah. My dog just, like, her toy just started falling. I know.
It sounded like dropping a drumstick or something.
Yeah.
Gabby.
Pop up here. Come on. Come here. Come say hi to Jess.
Gabby.
Oh,
hello.
Come say hi. There she is.
Hello, Gabby.
Say hi.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That face.
I like how 20 minutes ago we're like, yeah, we're out of.
I know. We were wrapping up, but then we got a second wind. What's happening?
But hopefully people like this bullshitting. So, do you want to go for a little ride or something?
Please.
Is that what you want?
Yes, please.
It's so hot here in Ohio. Like tomorrow at 3:00, it's going to be 104. With heat index, so it's like 98 standard. And today it hit I think it hit 94 here. And Ohio heat is pure humidity. Yeah, it sucks. So
yeah, it's really humid here. Not as bad as it was like when I lived in Atlanta. That's like that is just
oh yeah,
that is
hot Atlanta. Just reason to call it hot Atlanta.
All the time. But it is hot here. But we're in the mountains. We're in like the foothills. But it's the huge difference. Once you go a little bit further away and you go down a little bit in elevation and it's more flat without all of the foothills and mountains to break up the wind and everything, it is totally different. So this is, it's interesting to me that I'm further south than you, but it's going to be like 85, so like you're actually going to be hotter, but it's just because I'm sure that there are other places in North Carolina that are going to be 95 or whatever tomorrow probably, but it's just not. We're just lucky enough to get a little bit of relief from that, even though it still gets ridiculously hot.
Any reprieve is nice. But yeah, I don't take her for car rides when it's this hot. I don't take her for walks. Don't take your dog for a walk on a hot day. You're just going to hurt their feet unless you have shoes for them. And one of my clients, I think she and her husband busted out the window on a truck at a bar that the guy left his dog in the car over the weekend. So
yeah, it's dangerous, folks. Don't leave your animals in a car like that.
We don't deserve dogs, is what animals in general. We don't deserve them. They're wonderful critters. So okay, we can go. Good episode. Yeah, this was fun.
Another Pride episode in the books.
Exactly. They're always good to have. So if you have any fun stories that you would like us to share, I can pump them out on our socials or something like that. Contact us. It's easy to get a hold of us. Links are going to be in the bio for all the things and stuff, and a merch store. When you buy stuff from the merch store, you support the show directly. So I try to keep the prices pretty reasonable. And they're all slightly pervy. You'll see if you know, you know. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And I'm not sure who's going to be on next week, but it'll be someone.
Back to weekly.
Yeah. We are back to weekly now. So tell your friends. Engagement had definitely dropped off big time on the show with us going to every 2 weeks. So I'm hoping that this kind of brings more people in. And I mean, it makes sense. If when a show comes out weekly, you expect it. When it's every 2 weeks, you start to forget about it.
True.
So
back to weekly is good. So usually Thursdays, right? Thursdays or Fridays, it'll come out.
Yeah, the release Thursdays probably, unless I wind up recording late on a Wednesday or something. Who knows? Thursdays or Fridays, yeah. That's a good way of putting it. It'll come out when it comes out, when it's ready to come out, and not a moment sooner. All right, Jess.
All right.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for watching, listening, whatever.